Hello, Tyne. Today I'm going to talk about how to plot your novel from complete scratch, covering all the basics you need to know. Let's get into it. So there's two main ways to plot a novel. There's starting with the characters and there's starting with the plot points. I generally start with the characters, and that's the one that I'm primarily going to be covering in this, but there's plenty of ways to structure your novel around a really great plot point you've come up with. But let's say you don't have a character and you want to create one, or maybe you have a character and you want to flesh it out more. I have a strategy that will not only help you create a character, flesh them out, but also it'll create plot points and overall create the structure of your novel and show the overall arc of how everything's going to be progressing. I'm going to be referencing my laptop since I use this exact model for almost every character I create. I really don't want to leave anything out. At the top, I just write in the title, the name of the character. I love to write in their birth year and death year. Thinking that far ahead about how a character would die always creates a lot of really interesting ideas. Then I put in the age at the time that the book is written, their skin color, their hair, their eyes, and any other distinguishing traits. So this character has glasses. Then I just have the height, their weight, and how prideful they are as a person. So if you have someone who's very flamboyant and over the top, they might be a 10. If you have someone who's extremely shy and meek, they would be a 1. I have a lot of things that I use to really figure out every aspect of the character. I like to list their traits and their opposites so that I could think of what would make them do the opposite of what they usually do. That can come up with a lot of great ideas. Put down their goal, their motivator, and their conflict. It'd be one thing just to have a goal, then there's what gets in their way, and then there's what makes them continue to strive to do it even though there's this thing in the way. I'll put down their quirks, their strengths, their fears, what they're most embarrassed about, their biggest secret, their biggest regret, what would make them break, what they would give their life for, what a perfect world looks like to them, what the secret spot they retreat to in times of trouble is, their most hated person, their general temperament, their biggest weak spot, what they want the most, what they need the most. If you have these in direct opposition, then it can create a really interesting character dynamic, like within the character. The thing that they would never say, never do, or never think. So these are the big three that can help you come up with plot points. Say you have no idea what to write down as the goal, the motivator, the conflict. Maybe you have some ideas of the traits, maybe you have a funny fear. If you know the character well enough that you can say, oh, well, the character would never say, oh, forget about this problem, this is the real thing, or oh, I don't care if that person dies. And then come up with a situation in which they would say that, it'll create a really interesting moment for your character. And so I take a little bit and just write out what these things that the character would never say, do, or think are, and then also with the traits. If your character's generally flamboyant, what would make them very meek? These can come up as either subplots or just as random plot points within the bigger story arc. What would make the character break is usually what I have as the climactic endpoint, or maybe false climax if I'm going to be writing one of those in. I always want the characters to come up against their greatest fear. If all of your characters have a secret and a regret that can be teased throughout the entire novel, not only will it add suspense, but it will also add emotional climactic points to your novel. If you have something that you're talking about, oh, I regretted so much the night of the 25th or whatever, and you don't really mention it, what I've been told is you're making a promise to the reader that you're going to tell them what happened on the night of the 25th. Sometimes that can work really well, sometimes it doesn't. I generally enjoy when I read novels and they're talking about something that we don't know about yet, and then there's this moment where you're like, oh, it all makes so much sense now. And that way when you reread the book a second time, it makes it come full circle and it makes you understand the whole first part again. It really makes you want to reread it a second time. And then as far as the secret, you could have the character completely motivated by their secret, or you could have the character be slowly revealing it. It could be an internal motive, it could be an external motive. The more you know your character, the easier it's going to be for you to flesh everything else out. And what you'll find when you're filling this out is that some things will come up over and over and over again. Maybe the thing that he regrets the most is something having to do with his father, and then the thing that would make him break the most is losing his family, and maybe the thing he would never do is just like slam the door behind him as he walks out. I don't know. You might notice that all of these things are forming around a central theme, and that can either be the motivator or it can be the goal, or sometimes it might even be the conflict. You'll kind of start to get an idea of what your plot is about while you're coming up with this. So let's talk about how you actually begin to plot everything out. You might remember this plot method from elementary school or middle school or whenever someone taught you plot once upon a time, where there's the rising action, the climax, and the falling action. I absolutely hate that. I hate that so much. It is not what a plot looks like, especially in my mind. It's just plots don't look like that. Here, let me give you an example. This is my plotting whiteboard. I do all of my plotting on this. And right now it's going to act as a demonstration, and I'm going to be doing it with my left hand because I didn't think I was going to be doing this when I started filming. So general climaxes look something like that. That's probably the one you've seen, and it's rising action, climax, falling action, end. So maybe the character starts here in kind of a low point. This first section is where you're setting up the base of what the character is like before the story starts. It might just be a few sentences, it might be a paragraph, it might be an epilogue, even though a lot of people really hate epilogues. I don't really like epilogues either, but it's your choice. Some books really need an epilogue, some don't. And then you're gonna have the first like mini climax, like the point where everything changes. It's going to be a call to action, it's not the point of no return. It's something that gets everything going for your character. They meet a wizard. They find a photo of a parent they don't remember. Whatever this big idea is that gets everyone engaged in the novel. You're gonna find out a little bit more about it. Then there's the point of no return. Once they start following this path, there is no way things aren't going to change for them. They're never going to be able to go back to this life that they had at the very beginning. This might be breaking into some place to get more information. It might be leaving their family. It's taking this one big step, and this all happens really early on in the novel. Then we have this kind of slope thing here, but there's three big points. These are challenges that come to your characters. It doesn't have to be 3. It can be more than 3. It can be less than 3. When I was studying plot a lot, I heard that there's like 15 challenges in most bestseller young adult novels. So like Harry Potter, Hunger Games, and Twilight. There's 15 average events that take place that really change the course of the plot or really make the characters struggle. And what it comes down to is whenever things seem to be getting too easy for your character to reach their goal, you need to just stop and think, what's the worst possible thing that could happen to my character right now? What's the worst possible thing that could happen? What's the thing I don't want my character to do? If you think that, it might throw your whole plot, the whole thing that you make right now, it might go out the window, but it will definitely make for a more interesting story. Then I like to have a false climax. So this isn't quite at the top of the board. It's just this little peak here where the characters come in conflict with the villain. Woman kissed the man and oh, it's love. And you think that everything's going great, but then something doesn't quite work out. It can either go directly into a plot twist, or it can just like fall completely down. Something awful happens, someone dies. Or it can be, oh, actually the person she kissed wasn't that guy, it was some other guy, she was too drunk, or aliens invade, or whatever you want it to be. And then that leads up to the true climax. And the true climax is the climax. It's the big event at the end of the novel. What I like it to be is when the character realizes that what they want isn't what they need and has to make the choice to take what they need. Your character might be going through the whole book thinking they want to date this person, they want to date this person. Here they finally get to date them, and then plot twist, something's actually awfully wrong with them. They are unveiled as to, oh, this is the big awful thing. And then the climax might be realizing, oh, this person that was in my life all along, oh, they're the real right person, and then romantic whatever with them. I'm thinking of Hallmark plots here, unfortunately. This is the Dark Night of the Soul right here, where everything just seems awful. So, boop, boop. Dark Night of the Soul. Everything is awful, everything is just... the end has come. We're depressed, we're feeling sad for the characters, everything is awful. Then we get to the climax, they win, everything is awesome, and everything turns out better than before, and we have probably a fairly short ending here. We don't need a lot after the climax. I had never found a situation in which an epilogue is necessary. If you can just tie this point back in with that and realize like how much the characters progressed, this is the plot that you're aiming for. You're not aiming for You want to surprise the reader the whole way along. You want yourself, your characters, and the readers all to go on a ride with you. So each of these points can be one of those things, your character's biggest fear. They have to come in contact with that, and then their biggest secret comes out, and then you tell the reader what their regret is. It doesn't always have to be something that happens to the character in the book. It can be something that affects the reader. If everyone else in the whole novel knows what the character's biggest regret is, it might be this unspoken thing throughout the whole novel, and then you have a flashback, or something less cheesy than a flashback. That can be one of those points. It doesn't directly affect the character, but it's going to be a big point for the reader. Have plenty of those. Have a false climax. It really makes things so much more interesting. And that can be the thing that makes your character say, do, and think the thing that they would have never before, or that might come in the plot twist. You can spread those things out. They don't all have to be in one scene. In The Dark Night of the Soul, that might be a great place to have the character showing a ton of traits, the opposites of the ones that they usually do, traits they haven't shown before. If your character's super positive the whole time, have them super depressed, and then either slowly or all at once right up to the climax. I hate writing The Dark Night of the Soul. It makes me really depressed. So now that you know the structure of the plot, I'm going to tell you some ways to come up with other ideas in case writing the character first isn't what you want to do. One of my favorite ways is to go onto Pinterest. I have a whole board of prompts that I love, of story ideas that I've been thinking about. Even if when I see one, I'm like, oh, that's not a whole idea formed in itself, or oh, maybe that's a great subplot, but it doesn't quite blend well here. I'll save all of the ones that really excite me onto their own board, and I'll name it whatever I'm thinking about titling the novel at that moment. And then kind of as I'm going through them, I can piece them together and I can line them up on that plot. Maybe they're just like snippets of dialogue that you've stolen from something. You can kind of piece those in there. And one thing when it comes to plotting is it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super strict. It can evolve over time. Maybe you need to come up with some world building things. Grab some pictures of real places, of drawings, of game worlds, to kind of come up with that kind of thing. And then when you need to tie it all together, it's just a matter of sitting down and really like talking through it with a friend, thinking through it yourself. My favorite way is to take it all the way back to the beginning or all the way to the end. Either way, you're gonna start with the villain. Having the villain fully developed and whatnot is one of the most crucial aspects. And it might not be like, oh, haha, I see here, I'm the villain. It might be the character feels like the biggest villain in their life is their mom or their dog or their boyfriend or their child, or maybe it's a storm. You have to fully develop that idea. If it's a hurricane, you need to be doing some research on your own about what hurricanes are like, what happens, what causes them, and then come up with the geopolitical sphere around that. What else is going on? What else is affecting? Why is this hurricane so bad? Is it because of climate change? Is Is that something else the character needs to be begrudgingly thinking about the whole time? If it is a big bad villain, what is their motivation? Where did they come from? How did they get all of this power? If it's the character's mom, what all happened in their past that made them feel so negative towards them? I created a video about my writer's notebook just a couple days ago, so if you want to see how I actually have all of my characters and whatnot laid out in here, you can go ahead and watch that. It'll be in the eye. I also cover a little bit of my plotting techniques and things like that. So here I have the novel that I just plotted a couple days ago in chronological order. So this isn't where the book starts. This is all of my thoughts about it. And this is something I won't do on my computer because I have to erase it, I have to draw arrows, I have to rewrite it a couple of times. So I started not at the start of the book. The start of the book isn't for 3 pages in. It's everything leading up to it. Here's how the villain got power. Here's the character's backstory. Here's the villain's backstory. World building goes in here. I don't like putting dialogue quotes in this because I find them very restraining. I have written things based around dialogue quotes before and I find it less fun, but if that works for you, then you do you, boo. But for me, this is something that I want to be able to reference as my guidebook while I'm writing. Whenever I'm stuck, I'm like, okay, what needs to be happening now? So I don't have bullet points in here. The only time I have bullet points in the whole thing is I wanted to make sure that I knew the 3 things that the characters needed to talk about over lunch in order to piece together the riddle and understand like what is going on. Because without all 3 of these pieces, it wouldn't make sense. Now the benefits to having your plot all written out like this is that whenever you're stuck, you can just come back and reference it, see what would happen next. And if you have some vague thing like big fight with the unkillable 3, and so I have to figure out how to write that fight scene. I didn't write that fully out. I also have him like in an area for a little while and I don't know exactly what's gonna happen there. And it's right at the end of the book and it's like he's stuck there and he's trying to escape. I know how he's gonna escape, I just don't know what he's gonna do while he's there. And it might end up being that I write a paragraph that's skimming over that. It's just like 3 months passed and blah, 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 instead of writing out every single day. Because if you don't have every single event written out, it's gonna be really hard to figure out how to write it. It's gonna be really hard to plan it all out in your mind. So starting from the beginning, you don't have to have everything figured out. You can write and fill up the whole thing, you can type it all up, you can go in and add lines later, whatever you need to do. I write notes in the margins all the time. Write the very first thing that is relevant to your novel. The first line that I have here is never going to make it into the book. I decide how the villain's gonna rise to power, what the villain wants, and why this is so important. Then I have a star over here because this is the first time when I write down things that are going to be coming into the book directly. But if at any point I want to reference exactly what his dad called his machine or whatever, I can just come over here and just read it out. It's written in bold. I can find it very easily. I know where it is. You could also have a reference page. I have a reference page of character names, character ages, and then like hair color and stuff because I tend to forget that. So basically brain dumping everything you can about every character. The big character outline I showed in the beginning, you might need to make up 3 of those for your top 3 characters so that you understand all of their fears, all of the things that would break them. Maybe the character's best friend, the worst possible thing happens to them. For me, all plotting is piecing together all of these different ideas. In Tyne, I know that your problem has been coming up with the idea that links everything together, because you'll know the ending and you'll have written the first 60,000 words and you're like, oh, what ties this together? And it always seems that you know the answer. I can throw out a billion ideas and none of them will be right, but you just talking through it always gets you where it needs to. If you're at home and you don't know anyone to talk to about, oh, well, I'm missing this big chunk, maybe read some inspirational books. I'm gonna video up later about some of my favorite novel writing companion books. And if you're not into reading or you think it's gonna take too much time, you can try the brain dump thing again. Try listening to some inspirational music, some movie soundtracks, things like that. But really, I do think that just rambling to someone about it is the best possible thing. Maybe you could even get on camera like I am and talk to your best friend 2,000 miles away and say, hey, these are my ideas, I know you need help right now, but we can't talk, or I need help right now, and here's my whole novel, here's what I have planned out, and just talk through it. And then maybe it'll all just seem a little more cohesive. If you do want someone to talk to, and you don't have anyone who's willing to listen, you're too afraid to get on camera, go into the comments section below and reach out to me. I would love to be a story coach one day, but I need people to help. I need some people to build my base on. So I'd love to talk to you about your story, or we could even form a community of people who help each other out. So please just leave your story idea in the description below, and I'll try to help you out in any way I can. That's all for today, so I'll see you soon. Bye bye!